Hello?
Marsha.
Yes, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for joining me on Organic News on Awake Radio.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Marsha Coleman-Adebayo, you received a BA from Barnard College, Columbia University, and a doctorate from MIT. You were a senior policy analyst in the Office of the Administrator at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and you had held various academic positions as adjunct professor at the Georgetown University School of Foreign Studies, visiting scholar at Department of African American Studies at George Mason University, and you won August 18th of 2000 a historic lawsuit against the EPA on the basis of race, sex, color discrimination, and a hostile work environment, and subsequently testified before Congress on 2 occasions. As a result, the Notification of Federal Employees Anti-Discrimination and Retaliation Act, No Fear, was introduced by Congressman F. James Sensenbrenner, Republican from Wisconsin, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Democrat from Texas, and Senator John Warner, Republican from Vermont. Along with the No Fear Coalition, you ushered the No Fear bill through Congress. George W. Bush signed the No Fear Act into law. Thousands of federal workers and their families have directly benefited from this law. And you're here now tonight to talk about your article that you recently wrote about what's going on in Flint, the chess game that's going on in the poisoning of the water at Flint.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Thank you. You've been involved in many things. I believe you've spoken at some Black Lives Matter events that I've been at.
Yes, of course, yeah. And we started an organization here called the Hands Up Coalition as well.
So, so let's get to what's going on in Flint. I'm trying to find the right words to describe this. Melissa Mays of What Are You Fighting For was here. I interviewed her at Columbus Circle. I kind of studied this fairly well. The documentary they put together was really, I interviewed the documentary maker, Kate Levy. Or Levy, I'm sorry, I always forget how to pronounce her name. And this is really bad. What's going on?
Oh, Flint is an unbelievable situation, because in Flint we have the intentional poisoning of an American city. And the reason why I say it's intentional is because from the testimonies of the EPA administrator, from testimonies of the Michigan governor, from state officials in the environmental quality group, we all know that they knew for months and months that the water was poisoned. And not one person stepped forward for almost 2 years. To inform the citizens of Flint that they were drinking, cooking, and bathing in poisoned water.
And they knew that Flint River was, toxic before they switched to it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm from Detroit originally. And Flint is about 70 to 90 miles away from Detroit. And so, everyone in the area knew that the river was contaminated. You don't fish in that water, you don't swim in that water, and it's because the water has a very, very long history of industry dumping in the water, and it's been contaminated for a very, very, very long time. So they knew the water was polluted. And then on top of it, not to use an anti-corrosive chemical, which was fairly inexpensive, or very inexpensive actually, to make sure that the pipes didn't corrode it was criminal negligence, quite frankly. So this is a situation where we look at an intentional infliction, an intentional poisoning of an American city. And so now, of course, we have the president who will go to Flint finally on May 4th. And supposedly he's going to Flint to listen to the people of Flint, to receive a briefing on Flint, and to figure out what he can do after 2 years of doing essentially nothing. And so I have another article coming out in Black Agenda Report about his upcoming trip, and also another article coming out in The Guardian about his upcoming trip, in which I basically argue that this is just hubris on his part. Maybe it's some kind of very sick political bucket list where you just sort of check off, you just check off different things that you want to do before you leave office.
Right.
But certainly, if he had wanted to if he was really serious about doing something around Flint, he would have done it a very long time ago.
Right. So you talk about like the chess game that's going on over there, and the people. Right. You refer to the most important piece being the queen, and who gets protected, and the people below. Hedeman, this woman Hedeman, was sacrificed to protect EPA Queen Gina McCarthy, who could have used her congressionally authorized emergency powers under the Safe Drinking Water Act to seize control of Flint's environmentally dangerous designs created by the governor and the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and she didn't do it.
The Safe Drinking Water emergency powers is so important for people to understand, because there are very few heads of government that actually have emergency powers. The EPA administrator actually has emergency powers conferred upon her by Congress, and the language is just unbelievable language, where it says that the EPA administrator may take any action she deems necessary to protect public health. How many administrators, how many secretaries of agencies have that kind of power where you can take any action? The language actually says any. When I first read it, and I went like, any action? I mean, that is such broad power. But the EPA administrator actually has the power to take any action when a local municipality, when a terrorist organization, when anyone is threatening threatening the water supply of an American city and presents an imminent and substantial endangerment to the health of citizens, the EPA administrator is authorized by Congress to take any action. So even though I understand my colleagues in Michigan are very upset at the governor, and as well they should be, and the Michigan Environmental Quality Commission as well they should be, the real anger should be at the EPA, or one of the places where the anger should certainly be expressed is at the EPA administrator, who knew that the Michigan governor was dragging his feet on this issue. She knew that the Michigan environmental quality folks were dragging their feet, and she did not take any action to stop these people from poisoning this community. And you know what's very interesting about this is that the president has never made a statement about the administrator that he gave this power to take any action. We still don't have a single statement from him. And I would be very surprised, and this is where I really do hope I am surprised. I would be very surprised if Gina McCarthy is not a part of the president's delegation when he goes to Flint on the 4th of May. I'd be very surprised if she's not there, because a way of whitewashing and cleaning up this act is to make it seem that she is not responsible for what happened in Flint.
Isn't it true that the emergency manager was given this incredible amount of power?
Right.
Like a lot of power was taken away from other people, and this emergency manager had like this sole power to and they're actually the one that is responsible for switching the water.
Well, he's the one. I mean, you're looking at fairly low-level people when you're bouncing this against the federal government, of course, right? Because the emergency manager was appointed by the governor of Michigan to basically streamline the economy in Flint. And when he left there, he did such a great job. Obviously, he was put in charge of the Detroit public school system, right? So he was a political hack that was asked to step in and take control from the mayor and from the city council to streamline. So one of the things that he did was say, he's a pencil pusher. Where can we begin to save money? Well, one of the places he thought he could save money was by switching the water supply from the Detroit source, to a river source. And so he's one of the people I'm hoping will be indicted on criminal charges. I heard him speak in Congress. I mean, he testified before Congress. So we're hoping that he'll be criminally indicted. But we can't get that confused with the power of the federal government. For example, in 1964, when George Wallace, the governor of Alabama, stood in front of a schoolhouse in Montgomery and said, "These Negro children will not enter this school because I am the governor, not a little low-level city manager or executive. I'm the governor of Alabama." The president sent in the National Guard and told the governor to move out of the way because the federal government was now taking control of this process. You see, the federal government could have done the same thing with Michigan, which is what my article says, is that President Obama really missed a shining opportunity to at least be as courageous as Kennedy and Johnson and to say to the governor of Michigan, "You will step aside because I will not allow you as president of the United States to poison the citizens of Flint." He had that power. He had that power. And the person who was supposed to implement that right underneath the president was the EPA administrator. So what I argue in my article about Flint that's coming out tomorrow is that the president also should be held responsible. And one of the things that we don't quite know, and was not answered at least to my satisfaction at the congressional hearings, was when did Gina McCarthy inform the White House that Flint, Michigan was out of compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Clean Water Act, and that the citizens were being poisoned? We still don't know that information yet. We don't know whether it took her a month to inform the White House, or 2 months, or 3 months, or 4 months. We don't know yet what the president did when he found out that the citizens of Flint were being poisoned. So there's still some questions from an executive position to me that we still don't know. And those are the Watergate questions, right? When did the president know, and when did he find out, and what did he do when he found out? We don't have answers to that. But the fact is that the president had the power to force the governor of Michigan to stand aside and to ensure that the people of Flint were, first of all, informed that they were drinking, bathing, and cooking in poisoned water, and then to send in the National Guard to ensure that they had safe drinking water.
And isn't it true that, Governor Snyder, he talks about, being sorry and doing everything he could. He doesn't take any responsibility when in fact, not only is he responsible? I mean, he appointed this emergency manager, but then they spent so much energy and effort covering it up.
Right,
which
right.
is the
so there
real,
were massive cover-ups throughout the entire federal government, right? Now, to his credit, I mean, I was at the congressional hearing. So to his credit, the governor did say that he was sorry and that, the buck stops with him and that he takes responsibility and all the, so he went through all the linguistic gymnastics around this issue that, the buck stops with him. He takes responsibility. He should have asked more questions. He should have listened more closely. So he said all that. The person who's never said that is Gina McCarthy, the head of the EPA. In fact, she said that she wasn't responsible, that it wasn't her job, that, she bears no responsibility whatsoever. And in fact, she called the resignation of Region 5 regional administrator who actually retaliated against the whistleblower who was able to conduct the research and show the different levels of lead poisoning. She actually called her courageous, that she was a courageous EPA administrator. So look, I mean, I think a lot of people are to blame here. But there were people who were given congressional authority when they saw that the state was intent on poisoning their citizens. There were people who, were responsible for the checks and balances that are supposed to exist in our political structure. There were people who were given that responsibility who never showed up to work that day and sat there and allowed the people in Michigan and allowed the governor and his henchmen to poison the people of Michigan.
And I wanted to talk about the privatization of, they were, looking to privatize the water system, on purpose. I mean, I'm just.
Are you talking about the fracking? Are you talking about hydrofracking?
I'm recalling what that attorney from Detroiters Resisting Emergency Management said on Democracy Now! Like a few months ago, where he was kind of insinuating that the governor was involved in the privatization of the water in Flint for some kind of profit reasons.
Yeah, I'm not so familiar with that. But, I think there had been plans drawn up around hydrofracking in the Flint area. And the question in my mind was whether or not Flint had become what we call a sacrifice zone. In other words, the people of Flint, I mean, it was a middle class community during the height of, when Detroit was sort of king of the auto industry, and when unions were still strong in Michigan. And of course, with NAFTA and these reactionary trade agreements, and with jobs leaving Flint, the people who had been the backbone of the industrialization process at that point became economic burdens to the system.
Right.
Right? And so at some point, I think there was discussion about hydrofracking in Flint, Michigan, and whether or not, instead of sort of carrying the burden of all these people, the land couldn't be better used in the fracking industry. So I think a lot of people are looking for the economic incentives to drive the people off the land, and certainly denying people access to safe drinking water is a way of driving people off the land. It's the same thing in Detroit, by the way, where the city started just locking people out of clean water. But just, if you fell behind on your water bill a couple of months, they would come out and just shut off your water. So it's a way of sort of cleaning out Detroit. And so there are some hypotheses that that the Michigan government was interested in pushing people out of Flint by removing them from sources of water.
I mean, that also sounds familiar. I've heard that come out also during the Sandy hurricane over here on the East Coast. And I mean, even the BP oil spill, I actually heard them saying the same thing, that the idea was to get the people off of that land. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I worked at the UN for a long time, and I worked in countries, in African countries that were affected by the encroachment of desert against fertile land. We call it desertification. And, so we always had a saying, which is just a truism, no water, no life. You can't have human life without having water. It's just impossible. And so, so one of the techniques of driving people out of any area is to shut off the water supply. And this government is obviously not above depriving people of water. I mean, even after the Flint crisis became public, they were still handing out people like 1 or 2 bottles per household of water, and these 1 or 2 bottles of water were meant to do everything from taking baths to brushing one's teeth to cooking. So you had kids who couldn't take a proper shower to go to school. They couldn't cook properly with a couple of bottles of water. So clearly someone had in mind that once people get tired of living a particular way, that they will move away. And one of the things that I heard, I went to a press conference after one of the congressional hearings, and I heard a number of people from Flint saying, I just simply can't live like this anymore, and I'm thinking about leaving Flint. So that's the strategy, and I, they've been fairly successful, I think, at pushing people off of their land. And the problem is that the property values really fell in Flint, Michigan, and so it's hard to even sell your house when you don't have clean water, first of all, flowing through your pipes. And then on top of it, you're responsible for the mortgage. Even though you've moved out the house, you're still responsible for maintaining the mortgage.
Yeah, they got the whole system rigged so that, the people really are just, screwed no matter what they do. I mean,
it almost doesn't matter what they do, because once they default on a mortgage, it's even hard to even rent an apartment after that. So in any direction that they go in, they're basically facing, a concrete wall. And so it's a terrible situation to put these people in.
And the people in Flint were even having to pay for the poisonous water.
In fact, the people in Flint had a higher water bill. I think it was one of the highest water bills of any water bill in the United States.
I mean, this is
an incredibly high water bill.
I mean, this is beyond, like, I don't know. I mean, again, like, you need a new term to apply this to. There's a woman, and I'm like, I can't recall her name, but she was in the documentary Here's to Flint, talking about how everything is beholden to the bondholders. Like the bondholders were sacred, and that's how the people just ended up getting sold out. Because they were looking to save however much money by switching to the toxic Flint River.
Yeah, right. And so now we have thousands of young people who have lead in their brains. And we have adults, who are stroking out, who are having whose cardiac systems are compromised, just to save a couple of $100 per month by adding this particular chemical to the water. And then, what's really sad is, you may or may not know this, but Freddie Gray, who was responsible for his death by the Baltimore police, was responsible for the uprising in Baltimore, was also a victim of lead poisoning and dropped out of school in the 10th grade.
In Baltimore?
In Baltimore, uh-huh.
Really? And he dropped out in the 10th grade?
He dropped out in the 10th grade. And, of course, at that point, he became the target of police suspicion because he was always around trying to find, things to do to make money because he had lead in his brain.
Oh, my God.
And so, what we can expect in a city like Flint, with all these children now with lead in their brains, is that a lot of them will end up, in this sort of following the same direction as a Freddie Gray. Many of them will end up in jail. Some will end up being killed by police. But what we know is that these kids will have compromised intellectual abilities. In fact, there was a woman. Actually, I sit next to this young boy at one of the hearings, and his movements was like someone who was actually almost seizing. And because I'm an environmental scientist, it occurred to me. I'm at a hearing on lead poisoning. Here's a young man sitting next to me with these jerky movements. And so after the program, I went to a press conference, and the grandmother of this young boy got up to speak. And what she said was that this boy used to be a straight A student. And now, since he was lead poisoned, his grades had dropped to all Fs.
Wow. I mean, this is, like at the same time, it's not surprising. I mean, it's just getting like completely, it's not even hidden. Like, I mean, it's just out in the open. I mean, the fact that they poison the water and then on top of it, covering it up. And
right.
in the Here's to Flint documentary, they're accusing the people of poisoning their own water samples. I was just like, holy.
Mortified. Yeah, mortified.
I mean, it's really, really clear what's going on. And it's really scary.
Well, I think Flint is not the worst case of poisoning. I mean, the lead level in Washington, D.C. actually may be higher than the lead level in Flint. And there's still about 300 other cities in the United States that have lead levels that are higher than Flint.
I guess fluoride isn't strong enough. They had to up the poison level or something.
Yeah, no, it's outrageous. Outrageous, absolutely outrageous what's happening.
And on your the page of your article called "The Flint Chess Game: The Politics of the Battlefield," there's a photograph of a wanted poster with Governor Snyder's picture on it. It says "Wanted right. for poisoning of Flint. Richard Snyder, $5,000 reward for citizen's arrest." And he hasn't yet to be questioned by state or federal prosecutors.
Right. That's the reason why this is really a chess game. Because what will happen is that all the pawns will fall. I mean, all these low-level people will be indicted. They'll go to jail. But people like Governor Snyder, EPA administrator, they'll just sort of, wander off into retirement and enjoy their retirement benefits.
So, right, you talk about, again, the one woman, Hedeman, who was sacrificed to protect Gina McCarthy, and, right, she never exercised her power to, under the Safe Drinking Water Act, to seize control of the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality.
Well, she didn't have the power. That power rests with the EPA administrator. What Susan Hedman could have done was she could have provided a cease and desist order to the state of Michigan that you will cease and desist poisoning your population. She could have done that. She didn't do that.
Right. And so, again, just referring to your article, it says, right. She could have seized control of Flint's environmentally dangerous designs. And then you say, this week CNN reported that low-level employees at the Michigan Environmental Quality were indicted, right, the sacrificial pawns. The chess game is on earnest now. To be clear, it's not that McCarthy or Snyder are of any consequence as individuals. It is the power that they so diligently serve that demands their protection. The king and queen in this scenario enjoy sovereign immunity.
Right.
Thousands of Flint citizens were poisoned, with hundreds of children facing a lifetime of medical and intellectual challenges. And who's paying the medical bills for all of these people? When I spoke to Melissa Mays, I believe no one was helping at the time that I interviewed her.
Right. Well, my understanding is that the president is supposed to provide some kind of Medicare assistance to the children and families of Flint. And the question is for how long? Because lead poisoning is irreversible. In fact, it actually affects the DNA of individuals. So that means that the grandchildren of the children in Flint right now may have lead poisoning. So the question is, how long will the government extend these medical benefits to the people of Flint?
Is there any possibility of the people getting reparations? There is a lawsuit underway. I was told. What are the chances that the people are going to? Not that any amount of money is going to be able to give them their lives back from a lifetime of medical problems and lead poisoning.
Right. Well, there are some class action suits that are underway, but as you know, it's going to take 5-10 years before those lawsuits wind their way through the judicial system. So I think, it would be wonderful if they could win some political victories so that the political system would have to provide educational opportunities, medical assistance, and all that. But to go through the legal system, it's going to be a very long, sluggish ride.
Right. You talk about in your article, one of the heroes of the Flint water crisis was a Dr. Mark Edwards, a professor of civil and environmental engineering at Virginia Tech, an expert on water treatment and corrosion, and it was Edwards' research on elevated lead levels in Washington, D.C.'s municipal water supply that gained national attention and caused the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to admit to publishing a report so rife with errors that a congressional investigation called it scientifically indefensible. Yeah. He is considered one of the world's leading experts in water corrosion and home plumbing and a nationally recognized expert on copper erosion. When asked by Barr to comment on the recent criminal charges brought against low-level state employees, he said, "We felt from the start that environmental crimes were being committed in Flint by both the state MDEQ, that's the municipal...
No, that's Michigan Environmental Quality.
And an upper EPA administrator. Apparently others now feel the same way, at least in terms of the state MDEQ. On the basis of our experience and the evidence I've seen, the Flint employee charged did not make a mistake, but he was also placed in an impossible situation and is not in the same league as the other bad actors."
Right. Right. So those are all puns at the bottom, right?
Right.
I mean, those are just the low-level folks who were turning on the spigot. And, you know, certainly they should be held responsible. But the people who really should be held responsible were the ones at the top, where the buck stops. Right. The governor, the EPA administrator. Those were the ones who were ignoring the scientific information, who were going after the whistleblowers, who wanted to tell the truth. You know, those are the ones who we really need to focus on. As you may be aware, Congress has called for the resignation of the EPA administrator and the Michigan governor. Excuse me. So, you know, so it's really going to be up to the people in this country,
right, exactly,
to really make our voices heard, and to make sure these people in these very high positions don't walk away from the absolute crisis and devastation that they created.
And just like the last couple of minutes, you know, because I do always see you at, you know, Black Lives Matter, police brutality rallies, and you did speak at the, wasn't it the Rise Up October with Quentin Tarantino was also spoke by Washington Square Park, right? You were part of that. Oh, did I lose you, Marsha? Oh. I don't hear her anymore. Okay, anyway, that was Marsha Coleman-Adebayo, from author of the Pulitzer Prize nominated No Fear, A Whistleblower's Triumph Over Corruption and Retaliation at the EPA. Worked at the EPA for 18 years and blew the whistle on a U.S. multinational corporation that endangered South African vanadium mine workers. She had a successful lawsuit which led to the introduction and passage of the first civil rights and whistleblower law of the 21st century, the Notification of Federal Employees Anti-Discrimination and Retaliation Act of 2002, the No Fear Act. The Director of Transparency and Accountability for the Green Shadow Cabinet, and she serves on the advisory board of ExposedFacts.com and coordinates the Hands Up Coalition in D.C. And this article that she did on the Flint chess game, The Politics of the Battlefield, is on Black Agenda Report, and it's also on my Facebook page, CAT, C-A-T, Waters, W-A-T-T-E-R-S. It's on the post for this show on Awake Radio. Oh, there she... Marsha.
Oh, hi. Sorry about that. I guess you get cut off.
That's okay. So, yeah, I was pretty much, just kind of reading your bio again. And, I was going to, kind of let you go. I thought maybe you had enough.
No. The phone just cut off. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess we'll just talk then a couple of more minutes of the, this whole Black Lives Matter, which, just yesterday, I, went to, 350 J Street here in Brooklyn, outside of the District Attorney Ken Thompson's office, where attorneys from Legal Aid were protesting the sentencing of Peter Liang, who killed Akai Gurley. And there's this, I was actually going to maybe play it while I had you on. I just have to kind of find, hold on one. Let me.
The thing is that I don't know anything at all about that one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, Akai Gurley, just going down the stairwell in his building because the...
Oh, yes, that's right. And I think they actually... Did they exonerate the policeman?
Well, he was found guilty of manslaughter in a jury trial. And and the district attorney, Ken Thompson, wrote a letter to Judge Danny Chun recommending that he get no jail time. And,
yeah, I thought that.
This one attorney who I always see her out at protests and things like that, she was saying how all of their clients, like the attorneys that were speaking out at this press conference that they had yesterday, were talking about how their clients will get a 1 year in jail for jumping a turnstile in the subway for $2.75.
Right.
And this cop who killed someone gets 6 months house arrest and 5 years of probation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not, again, I have to just kind of, let me see if I could find exactly where she speaks about this. I'll just play a few minutes of her interview with me. Her name is Noha Arafa, if I'm saying her name correctly, of the legal aid in Brooklyn.
Okay. Across my desk, I'm just I'm going to question it because, his offers have become ridiculous. They're far worse than Charles Hines' offers ever were.
I'm just
City, he jumped the turnstile 3 times. Easily, she would have requested the maximum that my client could have gotten. That's what prosecutors do after they've gotten a conviction, right? They ask for the maximum. Even we were talking here today, they asked for the maximum if you jumped the turnstile and been arrested 3 times. In this city, you jump the turnstile 3 times, $2.75, you get a year in jail. Or that's what they offer. He wants us to take him seriously now. He's offering our clients a year in jail over $2.75, and he let a murderer walk free, and he wants us to take him serious. He is full of it.
And your message to him is that?
I would love my message to be Ken Thompson is full of it. But, no, I as a public defender, I can't take him seriously. Any plea that's going to come across my desk, I'm going to question it because, his offers have become ridiculous. They're far worse than Charles Hines' offers ever were. He's throwing the book at people.
And I wanted... Yeah, so she can't take this DA seriously with wanting to give 16-year-olds who jump a turnstile a year in jail, and giving this cop who took someone's life.
Right.
6 months house arrest. It really is. It's outrageous. If the people put up with it much longer, I don't know. I get mad at the people myself for not standing up. They're starting to stand up more, but they really do. And we need to stop appealing to the abusers and just, right. It needs to come from the grassroots.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the hardest political lessons that I think we have to learn in this country is where does power resides, and because from the time you're in elementary school to going to college, you believe that it's a political system, that's where power resides, and people are elected to certain office and they hold certain political power, and it's actually backwards. It's actually an upside-down theory, because the reality is that we are the ones who hold political power.
Right.
It's the 99%. We're the ones who hold political power, and yet we're always appealing to our enemies, quite frankly.
Right. They're I look at everything. I was a psych major. I studied all about the family system, the abusive, dysfunctional family system, and to me, now we're just living in a gigantic version of that. Where, there's no one raising anyone up. Like a dysfunctional family system is, the children being abused, an immature, parent in power is extracting the energy, from the very people that they're supposed to be raising. And, like this is this stuff that I was studying all my life because I could kind of see what was going on in this system. I just never thought that it was going to be as bad as it is. And we really are like living in a gigantic version of that where, the people in power are supposed to be empowering the people. And yet everything is like this dysfunctional, codependent relationship.
Well, I guess I would differ. I don't really think the people who are in power are supposed to be empowering. Oh. I think the people who are in power are supposed to hold on to power. That's what their job is. And the real intellectual, and that maybe is a bit different, a bit of a difference between sort of a functional or dysfunctional family. But the goal of political power is to maintain political power. And the goal of political power is to disempower everybody else so that they don't fight, so they don't compete with you for your power. And so particularly under, capitalism, you want to disenfranchise people because you don't want people competing for certain rights and certain powers. And you don't want people to even believe that they have the right to fight for certain powers, because that's also a threat to the political system. So, so when you see the poisoning in Flint, when you see, the police, basically traumatizing whole communities, because when a young person is killed, it's not just the person that dies. It's, you're basically traumatizing an entire community, and you're hoping that trauma will force people to become less engaged because they're so traumatized that they fear going up against power because they're afraid that they may, meet the same fate as the young person who was killed. Some people just drop out of the political process altogether because of trauma. And then there are other people, like some of the mothers, who in fact fight back. And those are minorities, and that's what the system really depends upon, is that you'll have a small, between 2 and 5%, who will fight despite the fact that they're traumatized. And so, so we have a system that does that really well, really traumatizes people, and really punishes people who fight back.
Right.
And it worked for quite some time. And what we have to hope is that more people are becoming less fearful of fighting back. And oftentimes when populations see that their backs are against the wall and they really have no option but to fight.
Exactly.
I think we're becoming, as a society, more and more like that, because the system is crushing so many families.
Right.
And they're crushing so many communities that people begin to believe that they have no other option but to fight back. Right. And that's where we see people really questioning who has the power or who should have the power.
Right. I mean, I've always tried to empower people, like all my life, because I could see that the system was about disempowering people instead of empowering them. The problem I feel is that the people don't know their power. Like, they've been so conditioned to give it away, or to have it robbed, and to get people to really realize that they are the powerful ones. And to not be afraid of it. Like, don't be afraid to own your power.
Right. And we're beginning, we've seen this before, like in the 60s and 70s and 80s maybe, but populations learn at different rates, and the more repressive the society becomes, the more people realize that they have fewer and fewer options. And of course, when you start killing, family members, and you sort of take the fear off the table, because at that point, what else do they have to lose? I think we begin to see some of this fearlessness. So, I would like for people leaving our interview to really connect the dots between Flint and the Black Lives Matter movement and the progressive movement, because they really are the same. They really are the same movement. Whether it's, people are being forced to drink, there's an intentional decision to poison a community, or you decide that you're going to provide what I call sovereign immunity to police, which means that police are never held accountable for killing people. These are sort of the dots that we have to connect of a society that's bent on murderous policies towards communities of color and working class communities. And so the only question really left for these communities to answer is, how are we going to fight back so that, we're not the target of these kind of genocidal policies.
Right. Thank you so much, Marsha Coleman-Adebayo. You're with Exposed Facts, and you write for Black Agenda Report, and also your it's called the No Fear Institute.
Right.
And let me
thank you so much for having me on your show.
And I hope to have you back again.
Yeah, I'd love that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marsha.
Okay, take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And I just wanted to make an announcement. Other than, yes, please go to my YouTube channel, April Waters, Watters. Check out all my really great videos of Yanis Varoufakis, who's saying the same thing that I've been saying since 1970, only on a larger scale. We really do need your donations and support to keep the organic news going. And I just wanted to, for those locally to me, the passing of a true peaceful criminal, he called himself, Father Daniel Berrigan, who passed away. He was the first priest to ever be arrested protesting against the American war in Vietnam. It's going to be held at the Church of St. Francis Xavier on Thursday. It's Thursday, this Thursday, May the 5th. There's services from 2 to 5 p.m. and then 7 to 9 p.m. It's 46 West 16th Street. And then the funeral is going to be the Mass 10 a.m. on Friday, May the 6th. Some people are marching from 7:30 in the morning, if you're ambitious, to St. Xavier. And you can find this information on a RosemaryBurger.com. RosemaryBurger, BERGER.com. And with that, I actually still have a few more minutes left. So let me play some of Yvonne Goulet today at, yes, I have 3 minutes. Thank you, Luca, on Skype. He's telling me I have 3 minutes. So let me just finish with Yvonne today in front of the Board of Elections, my interview with her in the hallway. And here's a few minutes of that.
Board of Elections downtown at 42 Broadway. There's a commissioners meeting where all of the heads of the Board of Elections are having a meeting right now. And I've organized a bunch of voters and poll workers, witnesses to the audits, to come today to speak. And that's where we are today. That's what we're doing.
Tell me a little bit about your voting story. What kind of issues did you encounter when you were trying to vote?
Well, I actually was totally able to vote fine, so I'm one of the very lucky few. The only reason why is because I know...
Sorry, I'm just going to, for time's sake, I'm just going to...
As a voter, I was able to go and get a regular ballot. And it went through, and it was, because I was registered, I had switched from independent in time to vote for my candidate. This is a nonpartisan issue. We're talking specifically about nonpartisan issue here. Unconstitutional rights were taken away from hundreds of thousands of voters. This isn't about Bernie, Hillary, Trump. This is about hundreds of thousands of people who had their voting rights taken away from them.
And why were they given affidavits?
Because when they would show up, they would say, your party isn't Democrat, or it's not Republican, or it says that you're not in the books. And this is 100,000 people, statistics from the executive director that he told us last week. What is important to know about this is that 100,000 ballots, those affidavits and provisional ballots are not counted. That is crucial information.
Why are they not being counted? On the final vote?
When you have an election, and this is an absolute federal statewide issue, is that normally there's only maybe 10 to 15 discrepancies at a polling place. Oh, my party was, I don't know. There's usually 10 to 15 different discrepancies. We're talking hundreds of thousands. Well, we're talking 100,000 people that have issues. These votes are not counted. And that's what we're fighting for as activists, as voting right activists. We want to make sure that those votes are counted. And
wouldn't the Board of Elections want to be on the side of the people and have them vote? And if this amount of people got purged from the vote, they would be like, oh, we're so sorry, and do as much as they could to remedy the situation instead of making it almost like an acceptable practice to just completely eliminate over 100,000 people.
It's absolutely insane what I'm witnessing, and I've never seen anything like this. 100,000 people being deleted is a grand scale issue. Normally, when they do purging, it's a small percentage of information.
And their lack of response of acknowledging an error or some kind of a mistake and not rectifying
because
it.
They have no idea we don't know who did it, we don't know who caused it, who went in and deleted it. There are theories, and we can talk about that later. But you can feel free to go. But what's most important to keep in mind is that the certification is happening on May 5th in 2 days. And if that certification is sent through, none of the evidence that we find is going to matter because the votes are going to be approved and it's going to move on.
So there's another example of how they're not working with the people to solve this problem, right?
I'm not sure. The Board of Elections
is
responsible for the elections, and they did not do their job. They did not do a good job. They made a lot of mistakes.
So when you were hearing all these stories, what do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah, how do you feel?
Originally...
It doesn't seem like a mistake.
It's not a mistake. It's happening on a grand scale. It's a national crisis. It is election fraud. There's absolutely no doubt about it in my mind. There's no way that you can just say hundreds of thousands of people had their registration deleted and it was a mistake. It was a clerical error.
And they're not investigating or doing anything or even making April the 19th an invalid do-over. They should make a do-over.
We have lawyers from the... Feel free to walk through. We have lawyers from Election Justice USA that are in court right now trying to do everything they can. There was a lawyer last week called Mark Moody who tried getting a second lawsuit going on. I mean, this is a big deal. At the end of the day, the only person who can stop the Board of Elections from certifying those states is a court order. And we have the lawyers that are doing what they can. They're working for free. Citizens like myself and others are volunteering for free. You can walk through. So the lawyers are doing everything they can. We are doing everything we can to keep the pressure on the Board of Elections to come here, to investigate, to get some information. That's why we're encouraging media to come out here and report because we need your help. just like you need our information, we need you to report on it, and et cetera, et cetera.
So what's going to happen today are voters that were purged are going to have their case heard by this commission?
So today is basically an opportunity for concerned voters like myself and others to say, hey, I have been registered for 20 years in my house. I'm a registered Democrat. I vote every year. Why was my name taken out?
Okay, so that's just the end of, well, it's actually not the end. It goes on, but I'm running out of time. So please check my YouTube channel for the rest of this information on clear voter fraud going on here in New York City. So thank you. That does it for this May 3rd Organic News here on Awake Radio. And please also go to Awake Radio and the number 1 with no spaces. And please donate to Organic News and to Awake Radio. We really do need it. Thank you so much. And good night. Speak truth to power.